I gave myself 60 minutes to check out 9 Kings, because if a game can't sell you on the action in an hour, it's probably not worth your time. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and let's start the clock. 9 Kings is yet another upcoming indie game I've had my eye on. Call me an absolute stooge at this point, but there is nothing I love more than a fast-paced roguelite. But we're not talking about another isometric action game. No sir, 9 Kings is something completely different. And I'll tell you right now, I got absolutely enchanted by this game. At the start of the game, you choose from one of the available kings. Each king has his own set of unique tiles which can be used to establish buildings, deploy troops, and provide buffs to your other tiles. It is such a simple game on paper, but like every good roguelike, it sucks you in with its addictive gameplay loop and constantly evolving progression. During our time with the demo, we had access to multiple kings, but to start, only the King of Nothing was unlocked, which was the most straightforward of all the options. When the game starts, you have one card, your castle, which you need to place somewhere in the blank 3x3 grid. Your castle is the heart of your kingdom and thematically matches your king. Each castle tile has a unique active effect. In the case of the King of Nothing, the castle allows you to hurl a stone projectile at a targeted location. By comparison, the King of Spells' Citadel card allows you to call down a strike of lightning that chains to nearby enemies. There's also the King of Blood's Ziggurat, which allows you to summon an increased number of imps onto the battlefield. Like I said, each king has different themed cards, but it all starts with a castle. Once that's done, the first wave of enemies appears at the far end of the battlefield. This kicks off a cycle that will repeat itself until you lose or defeat the boss at the very end of the round. As expected, the enemy won't throw a lot at you to start, and in fact your castle's active ability will be the only thing you have to protect yourself, because if any enemies reach your castle, you lose. Once a wave of enemies is defeated, you're rewarded with 3 tiles, of which you can choose one. Those tiles will be from a combination of your deck and the deck of the king you defeated. So for example, if you just cleared a wave from the King of Nature, you'll be given the choice to pick one tile out of 3 tiles from a pool of 18, which combines your king's entire deck and the enemy king's entire deck. From this point on, you'll swap between placing down a tile in your kingdom and then fighting a wave of enemies, creating a loop that is simple yet very satisfying. What I found most enjoyable about 9 Kings is just how many different ways you can build your kingdom. You could go all in on troops and try and match the enemy's army sword for sword, or you could lean more into towers, which provide some defensive firepower for your kingdom. There's no one right way to play, and the combination of troops, towers, and upgrade tiles is going to be different every round. What I can't understate enough is just how much fun each king's tile set is to experiment with. This is obviously a place where the team can expand, and while we only had access to a limited set during the demo, there are endless possibilities here. One thing that I really enjoyed is that each king has a different center of gravity with their tiles. For example, the King of Nothing tiles revolve heavily around troops. The King of Spells, as the name suggests, offer much more in the way of spell towers and troop buffs. Then there's the King of Blood that focuses on summon troops and support tiles with unique effects. The other kings we played against, the King of the Forest and the King of Greed, also have their own focuses. And what's awesome is that by the end of the entire run, you'll have some amalgamation of all the king's tiles because of the way you're rewarded at the end of each round. One thing that wasn't entirely clear and honestly not very well laid out was the upgrade system. Each tile can be upgraded 2 more times during a round after the initial tile is placed by layering the same tile piece on the initial tile. While it's easy enough to figure that part out, what's not abundantly clear is what each tile receives as an upgrade. For some tiles, it's easy to figure out. For example, the Blacksmith, which provides a 2% permanent damage buff to adjacent tiles each turn, jumps from 2 to 4 to 6% with each upgrade. But for other tiles, it's not crystal clear, and that's something the team really should address given how important upgrading tiles is. After the first couple of times you go through the game, you'll start to understand some of the interactions between the tiles, and this is the first major pivot point. Troop tiles are pretty straightforward, but their interactions with other tiles becomes a huge catalyst for your success if you learn all of those benefits. For example, if you manage to snag the Boar tile from the King of the Forest deck, you can place those adjacent to your other troops to receive a flat 1% stat boost for every point of HP the rider has. That is a ridiculous buff just by understanding how one tile interacts with another. Another example is the blacksmith that I mentioned earlier. Before every combat phase, this will give your adjacent troops either a 2, 4, or 6% permanent damage buff that stacks throughout the course of the game. If you understand the game's systems, you'll realize that you should place this down as soon as possible and start racking up that stacking benefit. That damage buff over time is huge and can tip the entire round in your favor. Optimal positioning is also something you have to consider. Sticking a building that provides adjacent benefits in a corner is just less impactful. These are all things you get to feel out the first couple of times you play Nine Kings, and that dynamic changes, especially when you start experimenting with other kings. Nine Kings didn't win me over with their flashy visuals, incredible story, or all the trappings of modern games. Instead, it won me over by being different and polished in its gameplay loop. Once again, we're starting to see the roguelike genre evolve in a million different ways, and I, for one, couldn't be more excited. Nine Kings is built around a really interesting concept, and there's a ton of room for growth. The various kings are easily the most interesting aspect of the game, with their themed tile sets and unique castles that provide you, the player, with an active way to defend your kingdom. But it's the interplay between building your kingdom and defending it that I find the most interesting. Defeating a massive wave of enemies and then getting one of those tiles as a reward creates such a fun dynamic as you figure out how all of the pieces fit together to defend your kingdom. My only real complaint is that I feel like we're missing a layer of depth somewhere in the game. Everything is very surface level, and while that's fun, I really hope the developers can dig just a little bit deeper. Right now, when you finish a round, your king gains some XP in a progression system, but that doesn't seem to be tied to anything other than unlocking a few other kings, but that's not going to keep players hooked for long. What's missing is the carrot at the end of the stick, new tiles that you can sub into your king's deck to create your own unique set. I want to be rewarded for overcoming an entire round, and if that carrot doesn't come, I'm going to quickly disconnect from the game. Given how easy it would be to expand the tile sets for each king, I think this is the logical next step, but it's not the only one. Again, Nine Kings is a really solid surface level game, something you can pick up and play for 15, 30, 45 minutes and get a ton of satisfaction. But if the developers really hope to keep players hooked long term, they need to flesh out that next layer of systems that ties everything together and keeps players engaged. Bottom line, I really like Nine Kings and hope more people put their eyes on this game because I think it's a ton of fun and has a lot of potential. Guys, if you like this format and you want more games in 60 minutes videos in your feed, you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching and play on.